Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is our news bulletin for tonight, to be presented jointly by Bassem Bagdash and Rashid Haidar. Lebanese Foreign and Expatriate Minister Adnan Mansour has stressed Lebanon's keenness on the security and stability in Syria due to the geographical position and distinguished historical relations between the two countries. In a statement to the Lebanese Al-Nahar newspaper published today, Mansour said that there are some sides who want to exploit the events in Syria to undermine the situation in Lebanon and other countries, referring to the necessity that Lebanon has to control its borders with Syria to prevent the infiltration of gunmen into or out of Syria. He stressed that the Lebanese army is doing its duty in this regard, but it does not prevent the infiltration of the armed members into Syria. Minister Mansour added that the repercussions of the situation in Syria will reach the whole region, particularly Lebanon, Iraq and Jordan. He called for fortifying the Lebanese internal front and the national awareness to foil any attempt to undermine Lebanon's security. Chairman of the Iranian Shura Council's Committee for Foreign Policy and National Security, Alauddin Brojordi, has said that the statements made by the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Syria have political and propaganda dimensions due to the coming elections in Turkey. In a statement to the Iranian Students' News Agency ISNA on Saturday, Brojordi criticized the positions of Turkey and Saudi Arabia towards Syria and their support for terrorists, saying that Ankara and Riyadh have been working for the past 20 months to increase tension and escalate violence in Syria. He stressed that the continuation of the crisis in Syria isn't in the best interest of any country in the region, particularly Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, adding that the crisis in Syria is less tense actually than in the past months. On his part, and in a press conference held in the Iranian embassy in Kazakh, the capital of Astana, spokesman of the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Rahman Mahmoudburst, has warned that disputes and conflicts among the region's countries are not in the interest of any of them. He pointed out that Iran is watching carefully the tension in the relations between Turkey and Syria, and that his country calls on the two neighboring countries to reduce tension between them. Mahmoudburst said that Iran will do its best to establish security and stability in the region, and that his country has good relations with Turkey and is holding discussions with it on regional developments. Based on the principle of reciprocity, Syria has decided not to allow the Turkish civilian planes to fly over Syria as of midnight of October 13th. Details are in the following report.
Foreign and Expatriates Ministry stressed that in relation to the Turkish authorities which forced a Syrian civilian plane to land in Ankara airport and searched it before allowing it to take off, there were no prohibited goods on board. The ministry considered the hostile Turkish behavior additional evidence on the aggressive policy adopted by Erdogan's government, taking into account the training, harboring and facilitating infiltration through its borders and bombing the Syrian territories. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry announced that based on the Turkish government's decision to not allow Syrian civilian planes to fly over Turkey and based on the principle of reciprocity, the Syrian government decided to not allow Turkish civilian planes to fly over the territories of the Syrian Arab Republic as of midnight of Saturday, 13/10/2012. In a press statement issued on Saturday evening, the ministry said that the Syrian government regrets the Turkish government's escalatory decision, which primarily targets the interests of the Syrian people. The ministry concluded that despite the condemned hostile behavior of the Turkish government, this will not affect our commitment to the friendship relations between the Syrian and Turkish peoples, which are greater and much more important than any government.
A suicide terrorist blew up his booby-trapped car on El Mezzi Highway, or the High Street actually, in the early morning on Sunday, resulting in material damage only. An official source told Sana Reporter that the explosion was carried out by a Kia Rio car loaded with large amounts of explosives, causing material damage only, and no casualties were reported. Another report from Homs says that an armed terrorist group targeted a bus today carrying workers with an explosive device near Al-Abirini crossroads on Zayd al-Jabiriya road to the east of Homs city, killing 4 workers and injuring others. Meanwhile, in Aleppo, a unit of the armed forces today destroyed terrorists' hideouts and a number of anti-aircraft missiles near Al-Zira'a school and Al-Inzarat neighborhood in Masakin Hanano in Aleppo city. The army members also killed scores of terrorists in the area. In Al-Mazzi area in Damascus, citizen Ayman Youssef Wannous was injured in a blast of an explosive device planted by an armed terrorist group inside a car near Al-Fatah Mosque. Sana Reporter was informed that Wannous, who works for Al-Azmina private magazine, was severely injured. The reporter added that Wannous was admitted to the hospital to receive treatment. In Damascus countryside, units of the armed forces cleared the towns of Zabdin, Dar al-Asafir, Shab'a, Muhammadiyya and Jisrin in the Al-Ghouta Sharqiyya area of armed terrorist groups. And in Hama, an armed terrorist group opened fire on civilians in Al-Aidin camp in Hama city, killing a civilian and injuring 2 others. The authorities, on their part, carried out a qualitative operation against terrorists near Kafr Tun crossroads in the countryside of Hama, killing some of them and seizing their weapons. Minister of State for National Reconciliation Affairs, Dr. Ali Haidar, has affirmed that Syria will emerge from the crisis victorious, thanks to its unity and the unity of its honest people, saying, "Today is the day of serious and true work to build a strong, advanced Syria." In a speech at the National Reconciliation Forum in Homs yesterday, Haidar said that national reconciliation represents the return of the people of Homs to their neighborhoods, streets, and homes after they were forced to leave them, and that the forum represents a starting point for restoring Homs to a safe, secure city free of weapons and gunmen. On his part, chairman of the Subcommittee for National Reconciliation in Homs, Sheikh Nawaf Abdul Aziz Atrad al-Milhim, said that the people of Homs who gathered in this forum set an example of unity and amity, and that they defeated the conspiracy seeking to fragment Homs. Similarly, Father George Marrawi said that the forum is a meeting for amity, tolerance, and solidarity among the people of Homs, who want to show that it is quick to reconcile and forgive, and that its people will turn the page on the dark days that have passed. The forum was attended by the governor of Homs, representatives of Al-Ba'ath Party, members of Homs Governorate Council, People's Assembly members, clans and tribes dignitaries, representatives of social and cultural activities, and many citizens from various areas and neighborhoods in Homs province. Back to you, Rashid.
Thank you very much, Bassem. The Indo-Arab Solidarity Council has voiced its support for Syria's leadership and people in their battle against terrorism, lauding the honorable stances of Russia and China and their efforts to prevent interference in Syria's internal affairs. This came during a special meeting of the Council held in the Indian capital, New Delhi, on Saturday, attended by representatives of the Indian political parties, international organizations, law organizations, and academics, in addition to Syria's ambassador to India, Riyad Abbas, as a guest of honor. In a speech, Chairman of the Council, Professor Bihan Singh, lauded the Syrian-Indian relations and Syria's honorable stances in defending its rights in Arab causes, primarily the Palestinian cause, voicing support for Syria's leadership and people in the face of the US-Israeli plots. Singh called on the Indian Prime Minister to increase efforts within the non-aligned movement and to take initiatives to launch a peaceful process in the Middle East to prevent interference in Syria's affairs and to ensure adherence to the UN Charter, adding that Syria is the only democratic secular country in the Middle East. Singh denounced the Turkish government's act of aerial piracy against the Syrian civilian plane, saying that it constitutes a blatant violation of the international aviation rules and good neighbourly relations. The British newspaper The Times has admitted to the death of 2 terrorists of British nationality among the gunmen fighting in Syria by the gunfire of the Syrian army after they opened fire on an army patrol. In an article published on Saturday, the newspaper added that international press lauded the death of the 2 terrorists as courageous foreign journalists, which contradicts with the fact that they were armed fighters. In early 2012, the Times newspaper depicted the death of the 2 terrorists as victims for their inability to fit in the British society. Publishing an article on Saturday titled "The British Pals Who Died Waging Holy War in Syria," the newspaper said that the British Nassim Terry, 25, and Walid Blady, 26, were killed near the Syrian-Turkish borders last March, in a cheap and exposed attempt to obtain sympathy and to give the participation of foreign terrorists in fighting against the Syrian state and destroying its public and private properties an emotional and moral character. The newspaper said that the 2 men found in fact identity and meaning in religion, and that they were misled by those who preached jihad and martyrdom. Back to you, Bassem.
Thank you very much, Rashid. Well-informed sources have revealed that the U.S. has threatened to cut funding to the United Nations if the UN General Assembly votes in favor of a draft resolution that recognizes Palestine as a non-member state in the UN. The sources told the Italian news agency that the U.S. informed the UN that it will deal with increasing the Palestinian representation at the UN like it did with the UNESCO, which suffered from discontinuation of U.S. funding as punishment for its granting full membership to Palestine. They added that the U.S. administration insists on that the Palestinians have no way with the Israeli occupation government without conditions. The U.S. administration has been hindering all Palestinian attempts to obtain a non-member state status as it rejected a Palestinian request to the Security Council to get full membership at the UN last week. 132 countries recognized the Palestinian state, while the approval of the Palestinian draft resolution requires the majority of votes in the UN, which includes 193 countries. 35 parties and political movements in Egypt have called for demonstrations and marches at the At-Tahrir Square in Cairo next Friday in a protest against the barbaric attack that the peaceful demonstration were faced with last Friday during the Holding Morsi Accountable demonstration, and which led to the injury of 140 people. In a statement following a meeting at the headquarters of the National Assembly for Change, the gathering parties stressed their determination to submit a unanimous complaint to the district attorney to investigate the attack launched by the Muslim Brotherhood group against the peaceful protesters of the parties and liberal trends, and to bring those involved for trial immediately. The Afghani Interior Ministry announced today that an Afghani Atlantic Joint Force has carried out 9 security operations across the country during the past 24 hours. Earlier yesterday, it had been announced that 5 people were killed and 7 others were injured in 3 blasts that rocked South Afghanistan. A NATO soldier and a civilian were also killed, along with 4 of the Afghani intelligence elements in a suicide attack in Kandahar province in South Afghanistan. And now over to the final item with my colleague Rashid.
That's right, Bassem. Actually, it's back to local news. Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halqi inaugurated on Saturday the Basel Hospital for Cardiology and Heart Surgery and the Education Faculty at Tashin University in Latakia, with a total cost exceeding 2 billion Syrian pounds. The inauguration came in commemoration of the 39th anniversary of the October War of Liberation. In a statement to journalists, Premier Halqi stressed the government's efforts to fulfill the Syrian people's needs in parallel with completing the establishment of services, development and investment institutions despite the current crisis in the country. He said that the inauguration of the education faculty came within the government's plan to increase the capacity of the universities in line with population growth and the graduates of the secondary schools. Giving interest in higher education is one of the most important investment sectors, adding that the inauguration or the inaugurated faculty has the capacity to accommodate more than 8,000 students. Premier Al-Halqi said that Basil Al-Assad, or Basil Center for Cardiology and Heart Surgery in Latakia, complements other heart surgery centers opened in Aleppo and Damascus to provide patients with essential health care services, adding that other centers will be opened in Deir ez-Zor, Arestan, and all Syrian provinces to meet citizens' needs and to improve the health sector in Syria.
The end of our news for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Damascus Radio presents News and Views.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Everyday news facts are revealed showing that the Western schemes hatched for the region have reached a deadlock. The rules of the sides involved in the conspiracy against Syria have been revealed through the events which preceded their plans. The Turkish government of the Justice and Development Party has become one of the major factors that jeopardizes the region to danger. This issue pushed the Iraqi Prime Minister to warn of the perils of the Turkish government deeds which may have its negative consequences on the region as a whole. Even the Western states, which encourage Turkey on its sinister acts in supporting the mercenaries and supplying them with weapons, have seemed less enthusiastic towards the foolish deeds carried out by Erdogan's government. A clear stance should be declared towards the historic situation followed by Erdogan's government. This stance or measure should be more than a call for self-restraint, which was interpreted by Erdogan's government of more escalation. The troubles that face the Turkish government reflect the failure of this government in achieving what is requested from it, and exporting its crisis in such a way would not change the equation in which the Turkish people before any other sides would hold the Turkish government accountable for its negative deeds.
That was News and Views from Damascus Radio. Damascus Radio presents Syrian Local Press Review.
Hello, dear listeners, to all of you. The Syrian dailies issued today in Damascus highlighted the following headlines and news items. 4 workers are martyred and others injured in terrorist attacks against a bus in Homs. Armed forces destroy terrorist hideouts and anti-aircraft missiles. A citizen injured in explosive device blast in Mazda, Damascus. Based on a principle of reciprocity, Syria decides to not allow Turkish civilian planes to fly over Syria as of midnight of October 13. Lebanon is keen on Syria's security and stability. Minister Haider at Reconciliation Forum in Homs says today marks the beginning point for launching work to build a strong Syria. Chairman of the Iranian Shura Council's Committee for Foreign Policy and National Security, Brogerdi says Erdogan's statements on Syria have political and propaganda dimensions due to coming elections. Indo-Arab Solidarity Council affirms support for Syria. And finally, the United States threatens to cut off funds to the UN if it votes in favor of recognizing Palestine state. The Syrian daily Tishrin reported that State Minister for National Reconciliation Affairs, Dr. Ali Haider, affirmed that Syria will emerge from the crisis victorious thanks to its unity and the unity of its honest people, saying today is the day of serious and true work to build a strong, advanced Syria. In a speech at the National Reconciliation Forum in Homs, Haider said that national reconciliation represents the return of the people of Homs to their neighborhoods, streets and homes after they were forced to leave them, and that the forum represents a beginning point for restoring Homs to a safe, secure city free of weapons and gunmen.
That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
Damascus Radio presents Arab Sweden, a weekly program prepared by African Embassy and read by Damascus. With the company of sound engineer Suhail Khoury. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Obviously, the Arab papers keep on tackling the developments in Syria and their reactions and repercussions. Also exposed are the international sins on those events and the role of the West Gulf Axis, which aims to implicate Syria and involve it into further pre-planned schemes. Special zoom goes to Turkey's involvement in Syria and the unfriendly stance stated recently by the Turkish government on Syria. Primarily, the journals proud on the October War of Liberation, which did restore the Arab glories of triumph against Israel. The occupation is still being observed in virtue of its decisive importance. Now to details. For the Syrian crisis, the Jordanian daily Al-Arab warns against the American scheme against Syria, writing this project does not only the rule, but the whole Syrian state and its strategic regional role in the region. The American scheme against Syria moves to restrictions the economic fit and change the national Arab identity of Syria. On the other side, the scheme includes recommendations and others as precipitations to overhaul the Syrian state of this amount to a declaration on Syria. Washington finds in the so-called Arab Spring a sustained stance or chance for realizing all these objectives in bulk. The final aim is to bring in a regime loyal to it, which sets the sustainable of the bloody strategy now waging on. The statement of the same subject, the Egyptian journal Dastur in Arabic Constitutions writes, the Muslim Brothers organization bears arms under an American umbrella. The state in Syria is unlikely. All others and Turks joining up in war on Syria is utterly dismissed, and absolute to happen, for this will push the entire region into inferno of much bigger conflict. Consequently, many states will be dismantled to the fore. Turkey, particularly in the shadow of the national resistance that hates the existence of the ruling Justice and Development Party.
You're still tuned to the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic, Damascus Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude our English transmission for tonight, let's have a look once more at the main stories.
Lebanese Foreign Minister Adnan Mansour stresses Lebanon's keenness on the security and stability in Syria. Chairman of the Iranian Shura Council's Committee for Foreign Policy and National Security, Alauddin Brojardi, says that the statements made by Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Syria have political and propaganda dimensions. Syria decides to prohibit Turkish airliners from flying over Syria as of midnight of October the 13th. A suicide terrorist blows up his booby-trapped car on El Mezzi High Street in the early morning on Sunday, resulting in material damage only. Minister of State for Reconciliation Affairs Dr. Ali Haidar affirms that Syria will emerge from the crisis victorious thanks to its unity and the unity of its honest people. The Indian Arab Solidarity Council voices its support of Syria's leadership and people in their battle against terrorism. And the British newspaper The Times admits to the death of 2 terrorists of British nationality among the gunmen fighting in Syria by the gunfire of the Syrian army after they opened fire on an army patrol.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our English transmission for tonight. Please join us tomorrow at the same time and on the same frequency. Until then, this is Damascus Radio with all the staff members wishing you all the best and a very good night.